Hi, everyone. I just wanted to welcome you to our exciting evening where we're going to be presenting CMS's school reopening plan for when and if we are able to come back into a hybrid model. My name is Jennifer Casper. I'm the assistant principal here at Carmel Middle School, and I have our two counselors with us tonight as well. So I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves right now. Sarah, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Greco, and I'm your student's counselor if their last name begins with A through K.
Good evening, everyone, and I am Melissa Magretta, and I am your student school counselor, or maybe will be your student school counselor if your last name begins with L through Z. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
So I want to start by saying that the real purpose of this presentation is to assist you in making the best educated decision that you can for whether you'd like your child to stay in a distance learning model or to come to campus when and if we're able to go into a hybrid model. And I know that the district will be sending you out a survey this week in order to choose either model, which I think will be due next Friday. So please feel free to ask whatever questions you have tonight so that we can ensure that you have all the information that you need to move forward. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and jump into, I can never get my arrows won't work once we go into the Zoom. I don't know why, so I'm going to have to keep doing it that way. So I want to start with health and safety, which I know is of utmost importance to all of us. And we obviously can't control what's going on in the world with the pandemic and everything outside of campus, but we're doing the best that we can to ensure that we have a safe campus for your students to return to when we are able. So I want to start with arrivals and departures. We will be having a highly structured drop-off and pickup routine where students will be dropped according to grade level on different parts of the campus. We will assume that as you come onto campus, you will have already done our recommended health screening prior to leaving home. And this is a similar health screening to those that you get when you're going to the doctor's office now, or going into some place that's public where they ask you if you've had exposure or had a fever, so on and so forth. So as a child comes onto campus, they will enter the queue to have a temperature check done. We will have numerous staff members there to do the checks in the morning to keep the traffic moving. Your child will stay in the car until their temperature is checked. And when they go ahead and pass, they will be able to move out of the car to come onto campus. Students who are taking the bus will actually be temperature checked prior to getting onto the bus, and then they will be checked again when they enter campus. So once a student moves onto the campus, they will have a very controlled pathway that they can move through. We have numerous arrows and things that are going to be up, fencing. And once they enter their classroom, we will make sure that all desks are arranged so they're 6 feet apart. We will now be moving into cohorts that will have a maximum of 9 students per classroom. So there will only be 9 students that they will be moving with throughout the day. And we currently have a model set up where our teachers will actually be, they're teamed together right now in teams of 4 based on core academics. So that team of 4 will be moving classrooms temporarily for this school year so that they're all located on the side of one of our buildings because we have 4 classrooms in a row. So the idea being that that cohort of students will only need to move from classroom to classroom in between classes, and they will stay on the one side of the building in order to control movement and interaction on the campus. And it's also important to understand that students will stay with that same cohort of 9 throughout the entire day, including when they're eating lunch. So the non-classroom setting, we will be staggering the use of restrooms to reduce contact. And if there's an emergency, obviously we'll make a special exception. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be minimizing congestion in the hallways and public spaces. So what does that look like? We'll have certain hallways that will be blocked off so that students can't walk through certain areas to try to control the direction of traffic. We will also have fencing in the front of school so that there'll be certain areas you can enter and exit. We worked with a company, Mr. Morgan and I met with them last week or the week prior to break, and walked the entire campus, and they are helping us to make sure that we have all the proper signage, all the correct markings on the ground to make sure that students are 6 feet apart and on our benches, so on and so forth, so that we're following all of the strict guidelines put out by the state of California. We will also be, as I said, controlling the flow of traffic, and we're going to go ahead and continue the use of our lockers this year, and students will not be dressing out for PE while they're on campus. Face coverings will be worn by staff and by students all day, no exception, except for, I guess, when they're eating and drinking. We do have cohorts of students that are on campus right now, and the masks are not bothering them at all. They actually just forget that they're even on. So I don't see this as being a problem, but we want to ensure that students are safe as well as our staff. Cleaning and maintenance, our classrooms will be disinfected between every class. So we have a built-in 15-minute passing period between each class, and that will give teachers time to clean and give the cleaning material time to work to disinfect the desks before the students re-enter. Classrooms will also be disinfected again at the end of the day for the start of the next school day. Bathrooms are currently cleaned every 2 hours, and we will stay on that schedule once we're back on campus. And there are hand sanitizing stations located throughout the campus and in every classroom. Food services will still be available while students are here on campus. And the bonus this year is that all meals will be free to every student who is here, and we'll be taking a lunch count, most likely either in the evening or in the morning when students arrive on campus to see how many students will be eating. We'll be serving our meals outdoors, and as we foresee it now, they'll be rolled out on carts throughout the campus. They'll be easy grab and go meals so that we can just excuse classes one at a time, and 9 students who are socially distanced can walk up, grab a meal, and go back to wherever they're eating. They will have designated eating areas on the campus where their cohort can sit in a distanced area and be able to have lunch. If it's raining, we'll obviously eat indoors. So as far as transportation goes, we're currently limited to the outlying areas of our district. So we won't be offering busing in town as of right now. But if students are taking the bus, if you do live in those outlying areas, the bus drivers and the students, just as when they're on campus, will have face coverings on at all times. We'll have a maximum of 14 students to each bus. And the buses are thoroughly cleaned and disinfected after every run. So let's jump into the nitty-gritty of our hybrid model. Students are going to be broken into A and B cohorts. So when we created the program that we have currently in place for distance learning, we had given you a survey at the beginning of the year asking if you thought you would like to stay in a distance learning model or if you thought you would come back on campus as hybrid. And that was obviously just to feel people out. We weren't holding you to anything. And so when Mr. Morgan created the classes of students, he put together groups of students that could be easily broken into 2 cohorts that would come onto campus for hybrid, and then moved in as the extra students, because we can only have 18 that we can break into 2 groups of 9. Those were the students who had said that they would like to stay in a distance learning model. So ideally, what we will do is just take your child's class, and that class will be broken into 2 different cohorts. We were originally saying, and I believe we're still trying to stick to this, that we will break them up alphabetically, and that's to help the families who have children that are at the elementary and at the middle school, so that your students are on campus on the same days. So if you're in the A cohort, you would be on campus on Mondays and Wednesdays. And if you're in the B cohort, on those days, you would be at home learning asynchronously, completing homework and assignments, and taking your elective classes. And then that would swap on Tuesdays and Thursdays with the B group coming onto campus and the A group working from home. We are going to stay with an ABC model. And on that C day, which is Friday, it will be a teacher prep and planning and collaboration day. There is a lot of work that has to go into this type of a model. And we want to make sure that our teachers are prepared and providing the best teaching that they can. That will also be a really important time for our teachers to check in with students, hold office hours, make sure that they're regrouping with their distance learning students. And teachers can handle that any way they can. One of the things that we've talked about, especially on that day, is possibly bringing in the band students and even the chorus students, depending on what the restrictions and rules are at the time that we're able to come back on. They're already slightly lightening the restrictions on band students. So we'd love to see if we could do either an after-school club so those kids get to finally play together, or possibly have them come on campus on Friday for a couple hours and be out on the field distanced and playing. And same with chorus if and when we are cleared to do so. So when they're on campus, they will be here from 8 a.m. till 2 p.m. each day. So drop off will probably be around the same time as it was before we went into this model, because we will need to be doing temperature checks, which is going to take us quite a while to get all kids on campus. So we've talked about doing a staggered entrance to campus. So we'll see once we plan that part all out what we decide on. But when a student is on campus, they will be taking their core academics and their PE class. Understanding that there will be a reduction in class periods. In the past, our students have taken 7 periods when they're on campus, but with a 15-minute passing period needed to be put in between each class period, we needed to shorten that to their core classes, which is the 4 classes they're currently taking, as well as a possible PE class. We're still not 100% sure we can do that, but it would be a small group, their cohort, going outside and working out in ways that were acceptable and approved by the guidelines within the state. So when students are at home, as I stated earlier, they will be remote learning. They will not have access to their teacher. That's really important to understand, because their teacher will be on campus actually working with the students who are here for that day. So they'll be on their own working asynchronously. They'll be completing homework assignments, projects, things that have been assigned to them while they were in class. We will most likely have a live office hours that they can check in with. It won't be their teacher, but another staff member should they need help with anything. And we will be holding our optional elective classes. And I say optional because we don't make our electives mandatory this year. So the other choice you have is of remote schooling, which is what we're in now, staying in the distance learning model for the duration of the school year. So with this distance learning model, it's pretty much what we're doing now. Your student would be in distance learning Monday through Thursday, but they would also look the same as the hybrid model, where that Friday will now become a check-in, an office hours day, and a teacher collaboration day. So this model is going to be dependent on how many people decide to stay in the distance learning model. We have a few different ideas of how we'd like to run it, but we really have to see how many students decide to choose to stay home and what kind of cohorts we can create. Our number one choice would be to actually be able to create classes of the students who are staying home and assign them to a teacher who is on campus. So for example, if I'm a math teacher and it's my A day, I would teach 3 periods of math to my students that are on campus. And then my 4th period would be a distance learning class, and I would switch over to Zoom and teach my students who were at home. So ideally, that would be the best way for us to be able to do it. And with that, we might be able to get creative where they take 2 of their classes on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, so that they're seeing people every day while they're gone, as well as their electives, or at least they have their core classes just like a hybrid student does on, let's say, Monday, Wednesday, and then they have their electives on Tuesday, Thursday. Now, with that in mind, we have to really be considering what are the key things we want to look at when making this decision, because it's definitely not an easy decision to make, and only you know what's best for your family and for your student. So you have to really consider your personal COVID health concerns. We are going to do our best to keep students safe and healthier and follow all, or safe and healthy, sorry, and follow all of the necessary guidelines. But you have to consider that as well, how well your child is currently functioning in a distance learning model. You know, for some of our students, they're doing better than they ever have in a distance learning model. And for other students, it's the opposite. So you really have to look at your family and your child and what's going to work best for you. You also have to understand that there is a high likelihood that if you do stay in a distance learning model, your child will have to change who their teachers are. And that's only because we aren't really sure if we'll have enough students to create a period for every single teacher that's currently here. It's really going to depend on the numbers and how they shake out. We're lucky at the middle school because our teachers work so incredibly well as a team. They're just an amazing staff. And so even if your child switches from one 7th grade science teacher to another 7th grade science teacher, they're going to be getting the same experience because our teachers plan and work so cohesively together. Key considerations for if you want to come into school and be part of our hybrid program is really, you know, when I look at it, the main reason to go into hybrid right now is for the social emotional piece, to allow students that time that they can finally see each other, be together face to face, and get out of their homes and feel like life is somewhat normal. You know, they're going to lose some of their actual learning if we move into a hybrid model. I mean, that's just being honest. They're going to move from 5 days a week of lessons down to 2 days a week of lessons, and really only participating in their academic program when they're on campus. It's going to look very different when you're on this campus. It's not going to be like the typical middle school experience where at break you're out and you're talking to all your friends and you can go out and play basketball and all those different things. They're going to be cohorted with that same group of 9 students all day while they're here, so that's another thing to consider. They will still be distance learning at home for 3 days of the week. And during that time, they will not have a teacher available to them at all times like they do now. They won't have set class times. They'll be just working on their optional electives, which will be set class times if they're in an elective. I take that back. But they'll also be completing asynchronous classwork that's been assigned to them. And then they will have office hours that they can check in on Fridays. So that being said, our teachers have a big job of making sure that if we do move into a hybrid model, that they're choosing the content, the priority standards that need to be taught to ensure that our students are ready to move on to next year. And I think that that is about all from me at this point. So I want to go ahead and open it to questions and comments. I know that was a very quick overview, and we will be sending out more information that you can actually read, because I don't know about you, but I'm a visual learner in the future. So Trisha, and do we have questions?
You do. I'm going to let Mark Angel talk. Mark, you have the 1 minute.
Great.
Please unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi, Mark.
How you doing? I wanted
I'm
to
great. Thanks.
thank you all so much for doing this. And I wanted to ask, when you're doing the hybrid screen time, my question would be, our biggest issue is screen time, Adam being on the screen. So when we send him to school 2 days a week, when he comes home, will he have book work to do that he can do at home without the computer, so that he is not on the computer on the days off, but he's only at school or at home doing schoolwork, but he's not spending all this time on his Chromebook?
That is a very good question. And I think it's going to depend from week to week and the teachers and the assignments. Obviously, they'll have more of an ability to not assign things on the computer because we can run off copies and hand things out, and they can assign things in books. But I don't have a direct answer for that, because every teacher is going to be different. And I know when I was a teacher, every week that I gave homework, it looked different. Sometimes it was on the computer, sometimes it was not. So I wish I could give you a more direct answer to that, but all I can say is it should vary, and they won't have, they won't be on the screen from 8 until noon like they are now, right? They will be able to work at their own pace. If they want to get on in the morning and do an hour's worth of work and then take a couple hours off, they can. They'll have more flexibility in their day.
That sounds really good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to let Allison Dunton ask your question. Allison, if you can please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I wanted to ask how much of the distance learning will be synchronous versus asynchronous? I understand Friday will change, but will they still have a similar bell schedule for synchronous learning with a live teacher if they stay in the distance learning model?
That's another great question. So if we are able to do it like we're planning, where they would be assigned a teacher on campus who's currently here teaching, who would just swap over to teaching a distance learning section of their class, then they would still be on a regular bell schedule, right? Because they would be checking into their academics just as if they were on campus from 8 until noon. That's going to depend on how many students actually choose to stay in the distance learning model. The other option we have is doing something where a teacher who is unable to come back to campus, if we don't have enough students to create cohorts that are being taught, period by period, doing more of an independent study program where they're working with a teacher who's kind of overseeing their learning in all the 4 core subjects, because they would still be able to get into all of their electives. So it's a lot of it is numbers and how we're going to play it out. What our ideal situation is that they would still have their 8 to noon day. Electives will also move to the morning. So on those days that they are not seeing their classroom teachers, electives would now run from 8 until noon instead of noon until 4, like we currently have it set up.
I'm going to let Seaberry Nockbar ask her question. Seabury, if you'll please unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm actually
Hi.
asking a hi. I'm actually asking a question on behalf of Rain.
Okay.
She rides her bike to school typically, and during a typical year, and she was curious if that would be allowed under this hybrid model with the required safety measures that and precautions that are going to take place.
That's another great question. And please tell Rain I said hi and thank you for asking. We plan on having a station set up for our students who walk in through that Rio Road entrance and who bike in. So that would absolutely be allowed. They would just have to stop at the screening station that I foresee will be back by the gym as they come up onto campus and have their clearance done, their temperature checked.
So it looks like we have another one, Randall Frederick. Randall, if you'll unmute yourself, please.
Hi.
Hi.
So I want to thank you guys. It's a ton of work, obviously. It's amazing to see what you guys have done. I'm wondering what percentage of students that need to do hybrid would swing it, I guess, like to make the hybrid go into effect. Because personally, when I look at it, I think it unfortunately makes it worse for both sides. Because my kids they're on. They haven't missed a class. They've got 6 classes. They're structured. It's Monday through Friday. They're organized. And looking at the hybrid, they're coming, they're going. They're not really getting a social emotional benefit. So I just see it being a lot of work. And I'm just wondering, like I said, I guess how many people need to want to do hybrid in order for that to kick in?
Well, for it to kick in to begin with, we have to move into the red tier. So we can't even consider it until we move into the red tier and we've been there for 14 days where we've stayed under the numbers that have been allotted by the county, which is 7 cases per 100,000. And then I think it's a 4% positivity rate or somewhere near there. So once we moved into the red tier, passed through the 14 days where we haven't had any elevation in cases, then we would consider the hybrid model. It's interesting you're asking that question because we haven't looked at, well, what happens if we don't have a large enough amount of students who want to come back to hybrid, that they want to stay in a distance learning program. So that's something that we'll have to cross as we start to look at the numbers. My understanding thus far is that we open into hybrid. So I don't know that there is an option. I hate that I don't have a clear answer on that, but it hasn't really been presented that, oh, we have to have 50% of the school to be able to move into a hybrid option.
Are there any, oh, we have hands. So it looks like Allison Dunton has another, we don't have any new hands raised. So Allison Dunton has another question and then
Great.
Mark Angel.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm wondering after we complete the survey and mark our selection, if we select hybrid and then based on your numbers, maybe it's the other direction. I guess what I'm trying to find out is if we elected distance learning and then we found out that it was going to be more asynchronous than now, would we have the option to switch to hybrid? And part of the reason I'm asking is I agree with the previous person who commented that we have a pretty good schedule. It's very structured. I also have an elementary school student, and the asynchronous time is most challenging because we both work and that requires more of our attention when it's asynchronous. And so a big part of our decision really is how much of that time is live. And so I'm just wondering if we will have an ability to make a change if there's not much synchronous learning if we did opt for the distance learning choice.
Right. That's a great question. And I completely understand that concern. I think that's part of what makes this such a difficult decision. Once you make the decision, unfortunately, you are unable to move back and forth because we would just have people pulling in and out of classes. And that would kind of cause chaos with our cohorts and what was happening on campus. I think it's going to be a challenge enough with such a huge school population to get us all on campus with cohorts of only 9 allowed in our classrooms. So Unfortunately, the answer is that you won't be able to move, but I want to assure you that we will try everything in our power to make sure that those students are seeing a teacher and learning from a teacher, because that's what we want to happen. I only foresee the other option happening if, because I think that we're going to have enough numbers both directions to offer both things. But I think that it's going to, you just have to know that once you make that decision is set for the remainder of the year.
So just to let everyone know, if we get new people to raise their hands, I will be putting them in line first that haven't asked the question. So sorry, Mark, and giving them an opportunity to speak. And then I will go back to those that have already had the opportunity. So I'm going to let Shogun Danielson ask her question, or his question, sorry.
That's okay, thank you. I have two questions. I also have an elementary school student and a middle school student. And the first is, the distance learning is working great for my middle schooler and it's harder for my elementary school. And I assume that I could do different things for each of them, and then it's not per household, but I could do my elementary school could potentially be hybrid and my middle school could choose to do either. Those could be different. I'm checking
Yes,
that.
you are correct in that. Yes.
And then the other question is just about the busing. You had mentioned busing. So the busing will be available. I live out in Jamesburg. So that bus will be running basically the same time that it was before we had COVID.
The timing, the schedule will probably change because we're starting later and all of our schedules have shifted. Like the elementary is going to be starting later than they were. We're starting later than we normally were, but the bus will still be coming in from that area. It'll just be an updated schedule of times. And I also wanted to add in, I had two things that I thought of right after Allison came off, is that most of you are probably attending the elementary presentation right after this, but you're going to see that the elementary is really not changing much from distance to hybrid. So your child will still be very much engaged with their teacher online or their specialists online. They will have much more of a controlled schedule than we were originally talking about in elementary. And the other comment that I wanted to make is that it's actually the school board that will make the decision whether we go back or not. So once we are cleared and we're in the red tier and the county says that we can reopen, it will be the school board that makes that final decision. Thank you. Go ahead, Tricia. You can bring the next person on.
Sure. It's going to be Shell Rittermall. Shell, if you can unmute yourself, please, or Shelly.
Hi, yeah, it's Shelly. Thank you very much for all the work you guys are doing. I had a question. What if a family actually doesn't respond to the survey? I wondered what was going to happen with them. Another question I had was regarding sports. If there was going to be any introduction to any of the sports. You said on Fridays, you guys might be reintroducing band and chorus. And I was wondering about like track and other things like that. And my other question had to do with if a student is showing any signs of sickness, which is quite often, how is that going to be handled? If, a child shows up with, the sniffles, or they cough once, or they sneeze once, are they going to, exit off the campus? And if that happens, how long do they have to stay off campus? And if that also happens, like, does that mean his sibling who's in another school or even at that school, do they have to be gone for a certain amount of time too? It just kind of seems like this weird snowball effect and does everybody have to get tested if they have any sign of sickness?
So before you mute her, can I just clarify? I want to make sure I got all three questions. So one is about COVID. One was about okay, I got them all. I just remember the first one. Okay. So your first question was what happens if somebody doesn't answer the survey? And we will be calling those people to see what their response will be. Until we get in touch with them to make sure that we know whether they're coming on campus or whether they're not. Second question was around sports. As you know, the high school will be bringing back their sports programs in the next couple of weeks for some conditioning. We have not even started to look at sports. We're just trying to get the campus open, and we're obviously in a different situation since our sports are intramural and they're not involved in leagues where we're following what other schools are doing. So that's an excellent question and one I definitely want to look into. And I do see us using those Fridays as times that we might be able to run certain things. It's really going to be where the county is at and the guidelines and what we're being told. And as we all know, in this world of COVID, everything changes day by day. You know, I say one thing and then a week later it's completely different. So as of right now, we currently have no plans to run a sport program. That does not mean that in a month we won't. We want to get kids out and moving. We just haven't gotten to actually planning that part of it yet. We've been focused on the academics. And then your last question was about COVID. I'm so happy you brought that up, because one of the things I wanted to direct you all to, if some of you saw the board meeting last night, you saw an excellent presentation by some of the members of our AC, going over our safety plan that was just introduced. It's a nice 138-page document. It has all your answers to everything, and that is currently on our website and very clearly marked for you to look through. But it has all of our protocols of what's going to happen. And I know that that is a concern. I mean, kids have allergies, we all do, and if they sneeze or sniffle, but there are certain symptoms that we look for in COVID before we send a student home. And so please refer to that document, and all of your answers will be there for you, I promise. And we also have moved our nurses station over to our girls' locker room because we won't be using that area anymore. So we already have a separate area for a student who does show up with COVID symptoms, like in the middle of a school day. We also have a whole nother area on the other side of like up on the top stairs from the gym, far away from that area, for where the nurse can see other students, so they'll be safe. And the nice part about using that gym locker room is that when a parent comes to pick up their sick student, they just pull right up in front of the gym. That student goes right out the door, and we're not cross-contaminating anyone else at that point. So I encourage you to look at the document to get, it should have all of your answers, and I don't want to say any and misspeak at all. Is there another question?
Yeah, you have a few. Lewis Harris is next. Lewis, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for doing this. I joined a little bit late and might have missed this, but is the middle school only going to go into hybrid once Monterey County goes into red? A waiver is not going to be, or is a waiver being submitted for the middle school too, like the elementary school?
So right now there is not an option for a waiver for the middle school. The current waiver being offered by the state is an elementary K-6 waiver, but it's K-6 for elementary campuses that do go up to 6th grade, because some campuses do still have their 6th graders on an elementary campus. So for us, we don't have the option to apply for a waiver. We have to wait until the county has been moved into the red tier, and we have to stay in that red tier for 14 days before we would all be cleared to open. It's a good question.
So I'm going to go to Barbara McBride. Barbara, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Yep, can you hear me?
Hi, Barb.
Hi, everybody. So for those listening, I'll just identify that I'm both a CMS parent and I'm a CHS teacher. So I wear a couple of hats here, but I'm just wondering, Jen, if I'm listening to the other parents and we have this sort of chicken and egg scenario, right? Where we're going to be asked to make a commitment to something that it's a little bit nebulous, but you can't tell us what the full program is until you have that commitment. So that makes it a little bit tricky on the parent end. Because like you said, once we make the commitment, we can't go back on it. I'm just wondering if the district might consider sort of a two-part survey that, first is just sort of reaction to this information about, under these conditions, would you consider doing that, so that I guess we can have one more level of input as parents before we have to make the final commitment that might give the district some data about, what percentage of people are thinking about staying distance before we have to make the final commitment. I know we're under some time pressure, but just hoping that the district might consider that.
Sure. And I want to, did you have another question? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
My other one was just super simple about, right now there's a couple of student clubs running, and I'm just wondering when that would occur, if any thought's been given to that. I'm guessing they wouldn't be in the hybrid days. They would be still on the days when students are home. So like how can a club run, or is that just on Fridays, or what would that be?
Good questions. Okay, so starting with your first question, I want to definitely clarify that I think I was probably too nebulous in the way I described it, and that's my fault. Obviously the hybrid program is very clear. You're going to have your classes 2 days a week, you're going to be on campus, normally taking classes in a cohort of 9 people with your core curriculum and your PE class. And then the 2 days that you're not on campus, you're going to be at home completing asynchronous assignments and taking elective classes. So, and then Friday will be off for everyone, whether you are in distance learning or not. If you're in distance learning, you will definitely be still getting your core curriculum. It's going to look very similar to if you were on a hybrid. You're either going to be Zooming in with our actual teachers, or you will be Zooming in with people who are presenting curriculum or overseeing curriculum or assisting you with that. And then on the opposite days, you would be doing your electives. And then Fridays, you would be open just like. So I don't want it to feel like it's this very dark, like, what is it going to look like? It's going to look very similar, whether you're on campus or off campus. You're just going to be on campus taking your core classes, or you're going to be off campus taking them. I just don't know what your actual timing would be, your schedule, but you would definitely be checking in with somebody and seeing a human. I just don't know who that person's going to be at this point, and it will depend on how many people we get. So I wanted to clarify that and make sure I'm really clear that they're going to be very similar programs. You're just going to be at home for the entire time for one and on campus for 2 days for the other. And then that being said, clubs, we have not talked about clubs yet either, but that's another thing that we could possibly bring on. The hard part is, yes, it would have to be in small cohorts. So I ideally see that it would probably stay as it is now, which is in the distance learning environment, so that we can have more children that are able to join and access those clubs. So thank you for bringing that up, because I did not address clubs. I appreciate it.
Okay, Bahar Iran Manish, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
So Ruby's thriving in the distance learning piece, and obviously she misses her friends like a lot of the kids. And I know for us choosing the hybrid model, it's to fulfill that socio-emotional. And I know that last night somebody asked in the board meeting from John Lyons about the decision around breaking out the groups in alpha. So has there been any thought into maybe doing something other than alphabetical order, or is that has that been finalized? That's my first question. And the second question is the class size of 9. Is that to allow for new enrollees or people to come back into the district who had maybe left the district or recently moved into the district? And will they also-
I wish. I wish that was why. Was that all your questions? Sorry.
Those are all my questions. Yeah. So
Okay. No, I wish the 9 was that we were leaving space. Unfortunately, we have small classrooms here. And I mean, Mr. Morgan and I have done everything we can to try to be creative with how we can place desks, but in order to keep that 6 feet distance between students and make sure that they are safely distanced and follow the guidelines of the state, we can only fit 9 students in a classroom. So that is partially, I mean, that is not partially, that is the reason why only 9, not because we're allowing space for anyone else to join. And then as far as the alpha order to split, we have not discussed doing it any other way. I think that the one thing that your child will definitely have is if they're coming onto campus, they will still be with that class of students that they're currently with. So it's not that we would mix them into or mix them with another cohort of kids. They've already moved through as a class. So their option would be a group of 9 out of that class. So we're a little bit different than the high school because they are really grouping based on the classes you are taking, where we're grouping based on the cohorts we've already created in order to ensure that kids are staying where they should be and they have the same teachers. So unfortunately, it would most likely still be an alphabetical situation so that we could meet the needs of students or families who have kids at all campuses and they don't have students going on different days.
Okay, we have Karen Loveday Beasley. Karen, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Hi, I missed the first couple of minutes, so apologies if this was already covered. I had a couple of questions. One, are you requiring that parents sign a waiver before your child goes back to school on a hybrid model? And just so I'm 100% clear, the hybrid model is essentially 8 hours of teaching a week. Is that correct? It just seems not very much. Okay, thanks.
So yes, we will be requiring people to sign a waiver before they come onto campus that just explains, you know, the different things that we're doing to protect ourselves, the things that you will be doing to protect yourself. So that will be signed prior to a student joining the hybrid program. And unfortunately, yes, it's 8 hours of their core curriculum, but that doesn't mean that they won't still be doing asynchronous activities outside of the classroom. So that could be watching videos, doing activities online. They will also have that time on Fridays where they can connect for office hours. And then they will be, if they're taking electives, they will have electives on their off days. So those would be extra hours of teaching. But yes, that is one thing. If we come to a hybrid, unfortunately, when you split a school in half, that's kind of how it ends up to fit everybody on campus and get them through safely.
So I just want to do a time check real quick. We're at 4:42 if my clock is correct. So we have 8 minutes before we have to be done with this one for the next. I'm going to go ahead and allow Shojin, so I'm sorry if I mutilate names, Shojin, to ask the question again. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Tricia. My name is Shogun. And I also wanted to thank you all for doing this and explaining it and allowing us to ask questions. The follow-up question I had hearing this was, either way, you had mentioned that maybe chorus students would be able to come together on Fridays. And does it depend on whether or not they're choosing to do the distance learning model or the hybrid model? Are all kids, regardless of which model they're choosing, able to do that? The chorus, if the chorus happens on Fridays, would everybody be welcome to do that? Or do you have to choose the hybrid model in order to be able to participate in chorus?
That's an excellent question. And let me preface that with the fact that we also have to look at where the guidelines are for chorus. So up until now, we haven't been able to have students singing on campus because, you know, you're projecting. But if and when we're able to do that, I foresee that even students who are in a distance learning model would be able to come on and partake in those activities, so that they're able to be part of that chorus. And especially with band, because you want to be able to come on and play with other people and be able to, you want to have the whole group there. So yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. Oh, and let me add to, I'm just getting comments here from my district office folks that are clarifying things for me, so I appreciate it. When you're looking at the cohort assignments, which was Bahar's question, if a student has no siblings, we can possibly move you to a different pair of days. And we may have to do that anyways to balance classes. So it's more if there's siblings involved that we'll be going by the alphabetical to ensure that they're on the same days. Thank you to my support staff out there. Go ahead, Trisha, next question.
See, Barry, go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, it's Rain. Hi, Miss Casper. I was wondering if it would be possible if you could do outdoor learning, so more people would be able to learn in one class.
That's a great question, and that's something that we actually looked into. And the problem with that is that there's a number of problems, but one of them being that our weather is so inclement here that it's difficult. A lot of times we're in the fog in the morning and the rain, and if and when it was a day that was all inclement, or if the weather changed halfway through, we would have nowhere to put all of those students. And then on top of that, there are very strict guidelines for how we can bring students onto campus outdoors. We have to have certain tents and certain sizes. And the last that we looked into it, it was not doable at the time. So that's a great question, but we're just sticking to half the campus on at one time and half not. And also we don't have enough teachers. That's the whole other part of it, because we would have to literally double our teaching staff in order to be all on campus and teaching cohorts.
Mark Angel, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. I have a follow-up question that's a little different. First of all, I didn't catch when our start and finish times would be. Second, and especially if we are participating in busing, and how far out the bus is going to be able to pick kids up. like we're out at Middle Canyon Road off Rancho, and I don't know if you have to be beyond the village to qualify. And lastly, what about doing chorus in the gym so the kids could be in a larger environment? Wouldn't that make it possible for them to do chorus? And still, it's because they're not really maybe using the gym as much at that time period on Fridays?
So the gym is still limited to only 14 people. So we cannot have a group any larger than 14 people or 15 with an adult, I believe, in the gym. So that wouldn't be an option, and the gym will most likely be used for PE. I think you're talking about Fridays though. So it depends on how many students are in the chorus, and it doesn't matter. It would be better outside because then you're outside and the students could sing and it's a safer environment. Teachers can also move their students outdoors if they would like. So that is an option. But that would be why we weren't able to utilize the gym, is because especially with singing, if they're going to allow us to do it, it's going to need to be in an outdoor environment. That's at least based on the guidelines right now.
Okay. Trisha Glass, please ask your question, and depending on time, it might be the last one.
Hi there, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, for the distance learning option, are students going to be receiving 2 days? Well, I know you're not really sure of it, but is the idea that they would receive 2 days of live instruction and then 2 days of asynchronous also?
Yes, so theirs would be very similar to what a hybrid student is doing on campus, where they will receive 2 days of instruction that's their core, and then 2 days of instruction that are electives. Unless we have to get creative with how we do those different class periods that I was talking about, where maybe they're doing like science one day and then math and language arts another day, and they're fitting that in with their electives. We haven't looked clearly at that yet, what our options are based on the numbers, but it wouldn't matter however we mixed it up. They will be seeing people every day, and it will be following fairly the same program that the hybrid is doing, just it will be all distance learning.
Do you want to take the last question? And be done?
It's up to you.
Okay.
I'm up for it if you are.
We have one question and one question only. So Shelley, you can ask your question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Shelley, if you don't mind.
Hi, thank you. You addressed it, I think, just in the previous question, but I was at the school board meeting or listening to the school board meeting last night, and I was kind of getting the idea, especially in the elementary segment portion, that the curriculum between the distance learning and the hybrid might not be the same because they would be moving at different paces. And so again, I think you kind of addressed this in the question before, but is the curriculum going to be the same? The people who are in distance learning, are they going to be at the same place in the curriculum as people who are doing the hybrid?
Yes, they will. That's a good question. And I did hear that answer last night. And I think what they were referring to is, and actually, I'm not going to say what they were referring to because I just remember it being commented on, and I thought it was about, with elementary, it's a little bit different because teachers are doing different things with us. A student will be getting the same curriculum, whether they're on campus or whether they are staying home. So thank you for letting me clarify that. I know that we need to end. I want to let you all know that I really appreciate all the kind comments and you being a part of this today. Please, 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 I know we weren't able to get to all the questions. Email me, I will answer. I'm on top of it. I usually can get back to you fairly quickly. So if you want further clarification, I will also post this presentation with some more clarification around the information that's on here tomorrow in the Friday letter I'll be sending out. So hopefully that will also, I know, as I said earlier, I need the visual, so it'll help you to go back through it again and just be able to kind of sit with it and sink in. But even next week, as you're making the decision, if you feel like you just need a little more clarification, feel free to reach out at any time. And I really appreciate Sarah and Melissa being with me. They just don't ever stop talking. It's annoying, but I'm just kidding. So thank you all. Have a great night. And I appreciate you being here. Take care.